reported from across coastal Gujarat. Cyclone Biparjoy has hit land and high winds and heavy rains are lashing the coast. The landfall will continue till midnight tonight. Many trees have been uprooted, electricity poles and cables damaged. More than 100,000 people have already been evacuated to safety. But even as we speak, we have 15 Indian Navy and Coast Guard ships on red alert. 7 maritime reconnaissance and transport aircraft are on standby. Both the Indian Air Force and the Indian Navy and Coast Guard helicopters are ready for any emergency response. But what's the latest situation on ground right now as Cyclone Biparjoy makes landfall, lashes across the coastal areas? Let's quickly cut across and listen in to the IMD chief.
As it was predicted earlier, it is moving northeast direction and it would cross Saurashtra Kutch and adjoining Pakistan coast between Karachi and Mandvi close to Jakhau port. By 11:30, the center of the cyclone will be over land. But landfall process will continue till midnight, and after that the intensity will decrease. At present, at the time of landfall which is going on, the wind speed is about 115 to 125 kmph, gusting to 135 kmph. By morning of 16th, it will further weaken. It will become a cyclone storm with wind speed of 75 to 85 kmph over the interior districts of Saurashtra. And by evening, it will weaken into a deep depression and wind speed will be 50 to 60 kmph over interior districts of Saurashtra. Our coastal districts, including Kutch, wind speed will be 40 to 50 kmph, gusting to 60 kmph by afternoon of 16th June. So therefore, the maximum impact of the strong wind will continue till morning of tomorrow, but peak impact will be up to midnight. The heavy rainfall will continue and it can lead to the inundation in the low-lying areas. The storm surge will continue. It could be about 2 meters for next 3 hours, and after that it will also reduce significantly as the cyclone will move inland.
So the worst is still not over. It's not as bad as was expected, and thankfully, but the worst is still not over. People are still being advised to remain indoors and not venture out of their homes or whatever location they may be. India Today, of course, has the biggest team of reporters on ground tracking the movement of Cyclone Biparjoy, whether it's Kutch, whether it's Saurashtra region. This is the area where the cyclone made landfall. India Today's cameras have captured the moment the storm hit.
This is the situation right now where the cyclone is just 100 kilometers away from the Gujarat coast and sea. It's difficult to stand here, but still, I'm trying to show you the visuals of the structure that has collapsed at the hotel right now. This is this is just in front of the sea, and the breeze is going on, rain is there. Everything is happening at this moment while the cyclone is 100 kilometers away. This is a severe situation right now here. The cable has broken and all the electric poles are just at the risk because of this heavy and gutsy wind. So this kind of situation normally occurs when the heavy wind is there. So still the other part of the structure, they are trying to removing it from here.
जिस तरीके से लैंडफॉल होना शुरू हुआ है, चक्रवात का ये लैंडफॉल है। और देखिए, हम मांडवी में मौजूद है, लैंडफॉल हो रहा है यहाँ से करीब 90 किलोमीटर दूर जखाव के इलाके में ये लैंडफॉल हो रहा है, लेकिन उसका जो इम्पैक्ट है वो मांडवी में भी देखने मिल रहा है और तेज़ हवाएं चल रही है। 110 के आसपास की जो रफ्तार है वो यहाँ पे तेज़ हवाओं की रफ्तार मानी जा रही है और उससे जो नुकसान होना है, लोगों को बार बार ये कहा जा रहा है कि लोग अपने घरों के अंदर रहे, घरों से बाहर ना निकले, क्योंकि तेज़ हवाएं चलेगी और ये तेज़ हवाओं का जो दौर है ये देर रात तक चलेगा।
Let me also now quickly get you a report. India Today's Ashutosh Mishra is on ground zero. He sent us this report.
And the pre-impact of this landfall of Cyclone Biparjoy is already visible in parts of Kutch and Mandavi. Almost everything goes invisible now. The creeks, very rough ocean, and the wind speed. This is literally going to create havoc in this region of Kutch. In fact, even standing at this place is next to impossible now. I can see literally the weather has deteriorated. All machineries are on standby. Quick response team will be at its initial. In fact, look at the wind speed. It is very difficult to even face this. In Kutch Mandvi with Sanjay Kumar, I'm Ashutosh Mishra for India Today.
So electricity has been cut off. People are being asked to stay indoors. What's the latest situation right now? I quickly want to cut across to India Today's Brijesh Doshi joining us from Ground Zero. Incidentally, Brijesh is using the headlights of his car to be able to report since there is no electricity in this area. Brijesh, what's the latest right now?
Gaurav, we are right now at Dwarka, and as you said that we are reporting from the headlight of the car. So this is the situation right now here. I would like to ask my cameraman to show you the situation that there is no power here in the nearby building. So power cut is there all the in the district of Devbhoomi Dwarka from last 24 hours, and it will remain same for the next 24 hours as well because of the impact of Cyclone Biparjoy. So this is the ground reality right now. The heavy and gutsy rain splashes are there, so it's very difficult to stay here on the ground. This is from the last 4 hours. I'm reporting from here only. So this is the situation that's getting worsened hour by hour. So everything has been taken care by the government. Still, the effect or whatever the damage has been done by the cyclone will be we will be able to know by tomorrow evening only because of the power failure in most of the districts, and there won't be any kind of data shared right now. So we don't know which kind of casualties has been done or which kind of
has there been any preliminary damage assessment done? Any preliminary damage assessment? Any reports that have come in? Is the worst over or is the worst yet to come?
It's yet to come because right now everyone is praying that the landfall process must complete by it will completed by 12 a.m. So everyone is waiting for the process completion of the landfall. So that's why there is no report yet. There were trees were fallen, there were electric poles were fallen. So this kind of damage has been done in Dwarka as well. But there is no report of the human death yet. So actual picture of the casualty or the actual picture of the loss or damage in the damage it will become by tomorrow. So tomorrow evening we will be able to know that how much this cyclone has damaged the Kutch area or the Devbhoomi Dwarka.
Okay, so which means before I let you go, which means some lessons have been learned from past cyclones, and thankfully more than 1 lakh people were shifted to safety. So fortunately no loss of life. Stay with me for a moment. Let me get our viewers the latest images that we've been getting and the most dramatic images from earlier today. So Cyclone Biparjoy, the landfall is still underway. It hit Saurashtra and the Kutch region. These are some images of Morbi of the moment Biparjoy made landfall. Wind speeds, according to the Met Department, touched 130 kilometers per hour. The landfall will continue till midnight. The town of Devbhoomi Dwarka. Dramatic scenes witnessed as Cyclone Biparjoy swept away everything in its wake. People were seen struggling even to walk. Of course, the government advising people to remain indoors. The impact of the cyclonic winds was so strong that electricity poles fell in several areas. Street lights not available in most parts. There is no electricity in most parts of coastal Gujarat, and this is by design, and that is why people were asked to remain indoors. Several trees were uprooted, roads caved in Jamnagar. This is the west coast of Saurashtra, one of the worst impacted areas. Wind speeds are yet to peak. Now, close to 1 lakh people have already been evacuated, and there are at least 30 teams, 18 of the NDRF and 12 of the SDRF, along with teams of the Indian Army, the Indian Navy, the Air Force and the Coast Guard that are on standby to be deployed in to take care of any eventuality. And shifting focus to the other big story we're tracking here on India First. The Defence Acquisition Council today approved the procurement of the Hunter Killer Predator and Sea Guardian drones for the Indian Armed Forces. The MQ-9 Reaper versions of these lethal drones were used to kill Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri in Kabul. The United States and India are in negotiation for the procurement of these lethal unmanned combat aerial vehicles capable of long endurance, intelligence gathering, surveillance and reconnaissance mission. These drones are capable of precision strike using those deadly Hellfire missiles.
These lethal long-endurance, medium-altitude drones may soon be the new weapons in the arsenal of the Indian Armed Forces. The Defence Acquisition Council on Thursday gave its nod for the acquisition of the Sea Guardian drones. The Army, the Navy and the Air Force are looking at 10 drones each. The Indian Navy has already leased 2 MQ-9 Sea Guardians, the naval version of the drones, for intelligence, surveillance and reconnaissance operations since 2020.
ये जो डील है ये हमारे देश की मैरीटाइम और ओवरऑल सिक्योरिटी के लिए बहुत ही ज़रूरी है, क्योंकि सर्वेलेंस सबसे ज़्यादा महत्वपूर्ण स्थान रखता है, क्योंकि हमें चाहिए कि हम अपनी एरिया में जहाँ एरिया ऑफ ऑपरेशंस है वहाँ निगरानी रख सकें, और ये क्षमता इस कैपेबिलिटी से हमें मिलती है.
The MQ-9A Reaper drones were used for the precision targeting of Al-Qaeda chief Ayman al-Zawahiri in Kabul. These unmanned combat aerial vehicles, apart from a number of sensors, cameras and radars, are also capable of carrying 4 Hellfire missiles for precision targeting of high-value targets. Both the Army and the Air Force are looking at these drones for high-risk operations to destroy strategic assets of the adversary without risking the lives of pilots. These hunter-killer drones can carry 4 Hellfire missiles. They're also capable of carrying 2 laser-guided bombs and 2 joint-action JDAMs. These drones can fly at an altitude of 40,000 feet and remain airborne for over 36 hours. They're also capable of loitering in the sky, scanning the ground below for the enemy. The MQ-9B Sea Guardian drones come with both maritime surveillance, reconnaissance and anti-submarine warfare capabilities. The drones are capable of providing over-the-horizon surveillance and reconnaissance support both to warships and surface units. With increased Chinese presence in the Indian Ocean region, coupled with Chinese aggression along the LAC, these UCAVs will help keep an eye on the adversary both in the Himalayas and in the Indian Ocean region, and take out strategic targets when needed. Bureau Report, India Today.
So let's try and make sense of this big deal that's being talked about so extensively. Joining me on India First is Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, former Ladakh Corps Commander and Distinguished Fellow at the Center for Land Warfare Studies. General, welcome on India First. Today is the 3rd anniversary of the Galwan face-off with China. Indian Navy already has Sea Guardians, of course, on lease. The DAC has given a nod for procurement of more drones. What's the message? What's the signal? And is this China specific?
So thank you for inviting me, Gaurav. The question is that we are upgrading and modernizing our force and seriously doing it. The fact of the matter is that we require drones very urgently. We've been seeking these drones for the last 8 years, and the negotiations have been going on for a very long time. At 2020, when all these things happened against us in Eastern Ladakh, we were woefully short of equipment like drones, especially at the tactical level and also at the operational and strategic level. Navy had 2 drones, and the Navy has been flying 2 drones of the same variety on the seas, but then there were nothing available on the over the horizon picture for the line of actual control.
Yes.
So this makes a tremendous change and tremendous difference. The height it flies, the depth that it can look into. So as an ISR upgradation, and then ISR is being upgraded, continually in the course of last 3 years. But these are game changer. If the Army gets 10 and the Air Force also gets 10 and all are being utilized in tandem in one manner, then of course we have a vision deep inside the Tibetan Xinjiang, and it will be a game changer. And of course, it also provides a lethal aspect of it, the targets and the equipment that it carries across, the missiles it carries across, and the long ranges that it can fire off. So this is indeed, as they say, a game changer for us. It's a very expensive toy.
Yes.
But having said that, it was most essential for us to have this to get our ISR going the way we need to do so.
Fair enough. General, the proposed GE414 engines for LCA Mark II and the AMCA, the Predator drones, the M777 light howitzers, the new armored fighting vehicles, just join all these dots. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, when he travels to the United States, will be talking about almost all and more. So what's the message to an expansionist China? This is India arming itself for more than just Galwan-like border skirmishes.
So truthfully, and you rightly pointed out, look at what these 2 senior colonels said in the course in Shangri-La dialogue. They said Indians are the modernization industry not ready for it, and India's modernization is weak. And look what President Xi Jinping said in the course of this week in Mongolia, Inner Mongolia. He said we'd create a steel wall of defense or something like that.
Yes.
The steel wall of defense, he doesn't have to fight against Mongolia or any one of the other land borders. He's telling India that message was conveyed only with one country that, on which land borders that they have problems. So, it's a message being conveyed to us through many ways, being carried out by President Xi Jinping himself or the senior colonels that they had put across in Shangri-La dialogue. So having said that, we have to prepare ourselves. If you add on to what the Chinese have done in the course of 3 years on the Tibetan plateau and in the areas opposite Eastern Ladakh, there are tremendous changes being brought across there. Of course, we have done commensurate work, but the Chinese have actually brought about the threat right next to our borders. With the formations there, with the kind of roads being built and the kind of runways being created, the heliports being created, the demographic changes being carried out on the border, the threat has been brought as close to it. It didn't exist before 2020, but that's the threat version today by their speaking, by their strategy they want to show, and also by physical location of forces, the way they're planning to do so. So we have to respond, and a response has to be in a manner that is not platforms alone. It's the way you fight. Larger countries have been defeated by smaller neighbors. Look at Afghanistan defeating Soviet Union and United States. And look at what the bigger countries have felt in Libya or Syria or Vietnam or Korea. We have to be prepared with what we want to fight with and fight how we want to fight. That's the issue. The war fighting, the methodology of war fighting, and what we require to fight with. That planning is what is being done now.
Okay. General, is China getting the message that India will fight back and not permit salami slicing of Indian territory like in the past? Or in your appreciation, will China just continue with its pinpricks to test India's resolve, whether it's in Ladakh or Barahoti sector, in the middle sector, or in Sikkim or in Arunachal Pradesh? Or will China plan something like 1962, a big push into India? What's your appreciation?
So, you see, what they have tried in the course of in 2020 when they came up, but Galwan is just one major event that happened in that period. 700 kilometers of front they addressed between Rakhi Nala and Demchok Nala.
Yes.
Very large frontage they addressed simultaneously.
And
so
this is Eastern Ladakh, for the benefit of our viewers. The general commanded his corps there. Go on, sir.
And no, 700 kilometers, and they came and nibbled across into the territory, denying us patrolling rights. Look at what he's done now. When the last talks took place, he says, we want another 15 to 20 kilometers of buffer zone in the area towards Burse. So he actually, in Burse area from Rakhi Nala, he has not reached the 7th of November 59 line. So he wants to inch forward in that area also. So he's a dissatisfied country on the borders, absolutely dissatisfied. It comes also across in Yangtze, where he's dissatisfied with the McMahon line there. And then, of course, he does training and exercises in areas in proximity to the borders.
Can I briefly interrupt you to ask, he's dissatisfied because he was pushed back, because there was resistance, because he lost life, and because he hasn't succeeded in his aim? Is that why he's dissatisfied?
So he's dissatisfied because of all this talk about sovereignty and territorial integrity. It's explicit that, they are stuck into those so-called 7th of November 59 line, which has no sanctity, which is no legality, which is it's absolutely arbitrary line that they drew it, and they now want to move forward to this 7th of November line. And on the McMahon line, right from beginning, they were dissatisfied. They were not accepting McMahon line. Of course, Arunachal Pradesh is another issue altogether. In this century, they can't take on Arunachal Pradesh for any matter. So they are dissatisfied because of this talk about territorial integrity and the land left by our forefathers and all the language that they have spoken in the course of last 5 to 7 years. Having said that, I think we understood in 2020 that this nibbling thing will continue. And if we do not actually get on and pull up our socks to deny any more attempt to nibble at the borders, we will be a loser. And therefore, the first posture change that we did, even before we went across to build up our forces in commensurate levels, was to deny any further nibbling, which, as you mentioned about, is salami slicing. So right from one end of the border to all 4,000 kilometers to Kibitu, it has been denied. Now that nibbling is not possible because we are located there and we are building infrastructure to sustain forces to deny the nibbling. Having said that, it is also a message to the Chinese. Look, you want to come and take on this territory which you claim to be from Chawan Lai days yours, fight it out. Fight it out. It cannot be taken by a surreptitious nibbling like what Sun Tzu used to say, acme or skill. That is past. That's past.
So now we've realized that China is not a friend. China is a lying enemy. That realization is there. But General, does the defense of our territory from Arunachal Pradesh to Ladakh in the Himalayas, does it lie in the Indian Ocean? If China presses us in the north, will there be consequences for China at the Malacca Straits choke point? Is that an option? Does China realize that?
I'm not too sure about this answer to this question here. You see, there are two different things. There's a territorial border, then there is a maritime frontier. A maritime frontier, Chinese has got strong weaknesses and we have strengths across there. But maritime frontier also has an issue of mercantile trade, which is also sustains countries like Japan or South Korea or countries like Southeast Asia. So all that trade also goes through the same 10-degree channel and the 5-degree channel and the Malacca Straits, through which the navies also pass through. So, a war in maritime frontier has got international dimension. It's a different dimension altogether. It expands it. The Chinese anxiety is certainly there on the maritime frontier. But the maritime frontier has got different connotations altogether.
Fair enough. We need to strengthen ourselves even more. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be the first ever Prime Minister to address the US Congress twice. He will be traveling to the United States on a state visit. This visit is huge, both in terms of its content and in symbolism. The Prime Minister will get a 21-gun salute. He would be hosted by the US President Joe Biden at the White House. There will be extensive dialogue on economic partnership, on strategy, on climate change. We bring you this special report.
A diplomatic engagement of the highest significance in 2023. The world's most powerful nation set to extend the highest protocols to Prime Minister Narendra Modi on his official state visit starting June 21st. Military honors, gala dinner, summit talks and an address by the leader of the world's largest democracy to a joint session of US Congress.
Prime Minister of India will be the first leader in independent India to address the US Congress twice. In my conversations with many of the congressmen and senators, I can certainly tell you that there is a lot of excitement amongst them. They want to hear about the India story and they want to hear about Prime Minister's vision and his thinking.
An Indian initiative his government launched in 2014. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to lead the International Yoga Day himself at the United Nations Secretariat in New York on June 21st.
Under the leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister Modi, who's really been pushing international recognition of yoga and supported the International Day. So the Honorable Prime Minister will be leading this session of yoga at the UN, at the United Nations, at the Secretariat on the 21st of June. I think it'll really be a very, very big deal.
He travels to Washington the same day. The Prime Minister is likely to attend an education event with First Lady Jill Biden. The day ends with a private dinner with President Biden and his family. An official welcome for the Prime Minister at the White House in Washington, D.C. the next day. A 21-gun salute in honor of Prime Minister Modi. A bilateral with President Joe Biden follows with defense, tech partnership and climate change in focus. At Capitol Hill, the Prime Minister scheduled to address the joint session and became the only Indian Prime Minister to get the honor twice. His speech will be keenly watched for his geopolitical import. The Prime Minister will be back at the White House in the evening for the state dinner. In attendance will be some 250 guests representing the diversity of the Indian American community.
Here that there's a huge demand for people to be in DC at that big dinner that President Biden will be hosting. Yeah, it is absolutely the hottest ticket in town. We look forward to seeing you there.
Vice President Kamala Harris and Secretary of State Antony Blinken will host a lunch on June 23rd for Prime Minister Modi at the State Department. During his US tour, Prime Minister Modi will address two diaspora gatherings, one of them at the prestigious Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. A visit expected to transform India-US ties and elevate their strategic partnership across sectors. With Seema Sirohi in Washington and Geeta Mohan in New Delhi, Bureau Report, India Today.
We will continue to track developments on the story very closely. That is all I have time for on India First this evening. Coming up next is Business Today with Sakshi Batra. Stay with us.
The popular imagery associated with tuberculosis is that of a person coughing incessantly. But tuberculosis unfortunately affects more than just the lungs. It is a disease caused by the bacteria Mycobacterium tuberculosis. Though it usually affects the lungs, it can also affect other parts of the body such as the kidney, the brain, liver or spine. However, not everyone who has the bacteria in the system develops TB. An infection that doesn't manifest as disease is called latent TB. Here are the common symptoms: persistent cough, blood in the sputum, unexplained weight loss, fever, and unexplained chills. Here are different types of TB. Renal TB. The symptoms are pus or blood in the urine, burning sensation, increased urination frequency, flank or abdominal pain. Brain TB, where symptoms are headache, photophobia, altered state of mental health, unusual posture, stiff neck, nausea and vomiting. Skeletal or bone TB, where joint inflammation, stiffness, spinal abscess, and severe back pain, including muscle weakness, are the symptoms. Gastrointestinal TB, where diarrhea, constipation, weight loss, appetite loss, abdominal pain, feeling of a lump in the abdomen are the symptoms. Pleural TB, or infection in the pleura, where the thin layer of tissue that covers the lungs and lines the interior wall of the chest cavity gets infected. Breathlessness, chest pain, cough, and weight loss are the symptoms. To date, the BCG vaccine remains the only licensed vaccine for the prevention of tuberculosis. It is traditionally given to newborns, and in that population, it has a protective effect.
In India, already the Indian TB Consortium under the aegis of ICMR has conducted trials in 6 states, and they have registered 12,000 contacts of tuberculosis patients. The aim is to prevent the TB disease in the contacts of this patient. So this trial is in run as of now, and we are hoping to get some positive news by 2024.
Hello and welcome. You're watching the Business Today show with me, Sakshi Patrai. Here's the top news. Hawkish US Fed stance ends a 3-day winning streak for markets. Investors turn cautious, pushing IT and bank shares deep into the red. Sensex down 311 points, while Nifty falls 68 points. Mixed signals from the US Fed provide some relief as it pauses an aggressive rate hike cycle, but rattles markets with a statement that it will raise rates at least twice by the end of this year. Trade deficit widens to $22 billion in May. It is a 5-month high, more than a 10% fall in merchandise exports, sluggish demand from major buyers overseas. Box office celebrates again with Adipurush releasing tomorrow. Analysts expect better first-day collections than even SRK's Pathan, 3D magnum opus to end 2-month drought. Global superstar Beyoncé blamed for rising prices in Sweden. Economists say the hysteria and crowds from all over the world at her concert in Stockholm led to a 20 basis point rise in inflation in May. Straight on to our first story then. The US Federal Reserve took a pause from hiking interest rates last night. Now, this was the first time in 15 months that the world's largest central bank did not hike rates in order to bring down inflation to its 2% target range. Now, while the decision was in line with what most of the economists had anticipated, several global markets and even gold trimmed gains, with the Fed also indicating that it may resort to 2 hikes this year to further tame inflation. Listen in.
We have raised our policy interest rate by 5 percentage points, and we've continued to reduce our securities holdings at a brisk pace. We've covered a lot of ground, and the full effects of our tightening have yet to be felt. In light of how far we've come in tightening policy, the uncertain lags with which monetary policy affects the economy, and potential headwinds from credit tightening, today we decided to leave our policy interest rate unchanged and to continue to reduce our securities holdings. Looking ahead, nearly all committee participants view it as likely that some further rate increases will be appropriate this year to bring inflation down to 2% over time.
So that was Federal Reserve Chairperson Jerome Powell talking about further rate hikes will be appropriate going forward from here. But now joining in to discuss what can one expect on gold prices going forward, with me I have Sugandha Sachdeva, Executive Director and Chief Strategist at Acme